What's going on, folks? Ted from Immersion here, and I found what I was looking for, the clarifying piece of information that clued me in to the fact that the Spirits Bard's spiritual focus thing was funky and had some weird rules around it. So I had said that I thought it was an interview, and I went around looking, trying to find this thing, and it turns out it was actually on a D&D Beyond article. And I would have never even had a single thought about this whole concept of material components, somatic components, and the spiritual focus. I had no interest in that. I just thought it would work all the time. So let me show you what I'm talking about, and then we'll kind of talk about it. So spiritual focus, here it is right here, the 3rd level ability. It says starting at 6th level, when you cast a bard spell that deals damage or restores hit points through the spiritual focus, roll a d6 and you gain a bonus to 1 damage or healing roll of the spell equal to the number rolled. So a couple things to take away from that is it has to require a roll. So if you have a spell, which I don't think any of them truly do, but if you have a spell that dealt a set number of damage, not a die roll, or something that heals a set number of hit points but doesn't require a roll. So the best example I can think of is Goodberry. For example, Goodberry heals a singular hit point. It doesn't heal like a d4's worth of hit points. It heals 1 hit point. So the bonus extra d6 there would not apply to Goodberry because it doesn't require a roll. Now, I would have just been more than content. And realistically, you can do it this way and you can choose to, rule it however you want, right? It's your game. You can do what you want. But I just wanted to talk about rules as written because I didn't know. So I had just assumed, probably like most of you did initially, or, maybe you guys have a better concept of that specific instance of the rule, that it was just anytime you roll a healing spell or anytime you roll a damaging spell, you just add a d6 to it. And that's just a function of it. It specifically states you gain a bonus to 1 roll, 1 damage roll or 1 healing roll of the spell. And I just thought that's how it was. But then I was reading this D&D Beyond article called Bards 101, College of Spirits in Van Richten's Guide, right? This was released a while ago and then updated with the most current rules. So originally I was going to make a video on this detailing it before Van Richten's came out, and then I realized it was just covering the Unearthed Arcana, and then it went in and made updates to it to make it relevant to the current version that's in Van Richten's updating for the changes they've made. And you can see it right here, College of Spirit features. It goes over all of them, talks through everything, and then it has a section at the bottom called pros and cons. And that's where I read about the material component. So we scroll down, blah, blah, blah. Pros, College of Spirits gets guidance, which is cool, flexibility, they get the extra bit. But here, let's look at the cons. Although Tales from the Beyond has some great effects, the random nature of the table might be off-putting to some players. I've stated that myself. It's kind of a bummer. The range of 30 feet could also require bards to wander closer to the fight in order to reach each Tale's effects. Keep in mind, Bardic Inspiration has a range of 60 feet. An excellent point. Whoever wrote this article definitely hit on the key cons. But here it is, folks. The big issue, they're even calling it out, D&D Beyond is calling it out here. The big issue with College of Spirits Bards, however, is the 6th level spiritual focus feature. It specifies that you can only add a d6 to a spell that is cast through the focus. This means that spells must require material components. Spells such as Vicious Mockery and Healing Word won't benefit from the subclass feature as they only require verbal components. Now, it states right here they must require material components. So if it requires material and verbal, that's fine. If it requires material and somatic, it's fine. The tricky part that we run into is, what if it requires just so a lot of people, most of you in the comments of that other video have said, well, what about somatic components? Because there's the line that says the same hand you hold the material focus in can also be the same hand you use to make the somatic components, meaning like if this coffee cup is my material, my material focus or my arcane focus, spiritual focus in this instance, I can still, maybe not with this, but I can still use my hands to make whatever, somatic components I need while still using this. This hand is still free. But my point being, it states it right there, it must require material components. So it doesn't matter if it has somatic and material, verbal, and or all three. It has to have material components. Again, I was completely unaware of that, like putting that 2 and 2 together, until I literally read it in this article. And don't forget, this is called Bard 101. So this is probably an article that folks that only maybe use D&D Beyond, folks that are new, folks are looking for information on this. I'm sure if you search College of Spirits Bard, this might pop up as one of the early things you find on Google. You go and read this and you're like, oh, that's weird. So then I did a little bit of searching. And I searched for I searched all spells with the healing tag that use material components, because I didn't want, when I originally made the video, I was kind of saying you can't factor in magical secrets because you don't know what people are going to take. So you can't balance this based on material, magical secrets, because who knows what anybody's going to take. So I said, well, let's take a look at all healing spells that have material components. Now, again, this will cover anything that has at least material components. They might have more. So we can see Goodberry here. Goodberry, as we discussed, doesn't require you to roll. We have Greater Restoration, Raise Dead, Regenerate, we'll come back to, Reincarnate, Resurrection, Revivify, Soul Cage, and True Resurrection. All of the ones that bring you back from the dead just bring you back from the dead with a certain number of hit points. There's no actual healing involved. Soul Cage, one of the options here is if you kill someone and trap their soul, you can siphon off of their soul to heal yourself up to 2d8 hit points. If you happen to have Soul Cage, you could use Soul Cage in conjunction with the spiritual focus. Therefore, if I think that's, you have to take that, yeah. If you took Soul Cage as a magical secret, you could siphon off their health and get an extra d6 on that 2d8 healing. But the only one that's on the Bard spell list out of all of them, and the only one other than that specific instance of Soul Cage, which is not necessarily the main focus of it, that does any healing, is Regenerate, a 7th level spell. And it says the target immediately regains, you touch a creature, they regain 48 plus 15 hit points. You could add a d6 onto that. But that means that you're talking 7th level spell is the only spell. I guess Soul Cage is 6th level. So if you took a magical secret for Soul Cage, then you could get that little bit of extra healing. But really, there are no other healing spells that have you roll that it would apply to. The only two options are one aspect of Soul Cage and Regenerate. Now, this instance they specifically mention in the article is Vicious Mockery and Healing Word won't benefit, as they only require verbal components, but the previous statement right there, must require material components, means things like Cure Wounds don't count either. So we could go over here, and one thing that I did enjoy when I went and looked at the lists of Bard spells that required material components that dealt damage, there is some good ones on that list that are pretty commonplace in the Bard spell list, right? So if we look, we can see Heat Metal. We can see there's a handful here, like Cloud of Daggers. I don't know how often that gets used. Glyph of Warding, Dream. But Heat Metal, Phantasmal Force, and Shatter, I think, are 3 pretty commonplace spells that I've seen on a lot of different Bards that either I've played or played with other people. Specifically, Shatter is one that Bards seem to often take, as it's a decent AoE with range. So that would at least give you the option to add the extra damage. Now, if we expand this from Bard spells to all spells, giving us that full list of damaging spells, we can see there are significantly more here that would be, the spiritual focus would apply to. You can see, and they come from a variety of levels. A really interesting, well, I was going to say Armor of Agathis would be interesting, but it doesn't require you to roll damage. It's just a straight damage. But you can see it goes through a variety of spell levels, right? Acid Arrow, as Abidalzim's Horrid Wilting, even down to things like Booming Blade, cantrips, which I guess technically would apply, right? It's specifies you add a d6 when you cast it through the focus. Yeah, I think Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade would technically count for that. Chromatic Orb, Chain Lightning. So you can see there's 5 pages worth of damaging spells, but remember that the list of ones that are on that are Bard specific are, I think, 7 spells. The rest would have to be you taking your magical secrets to get specific access. It's these, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spells. 8 damaging spells fall under the Bard spell list that would be part of, being able to use spiritual focus. And again, we looked at the healing, significantly smaller, but only one of them really applies, which is regenerate. Again, if you were to expand with magical secrets, the healing out, the only other one is that aspect of soul cage. And obviously, if you use your magical secrets for only damaging spells for the purposes of using your spiritual focus, you'll at least have a variety of other options to choose from. But yeah, I had just found that article. I think someone might have either pointed it to me or I clicked on it by myself by accident. And I realized that that's where I saw the line. Because prior to reading that article, I just was like, oh, you get an extra d6 of healing or damage, and just didn't think anything of it. But it does very specifically state in the class feature that it must be cast through the focus, and as such, in theory, you only use the focus to cast spells through it when you're using material components, because it serves the purpose of replacing those. I got a lot of comments on, well, what if I have a magical focus that adds a +1 plus whatever to my spells? Don't I technically cast it through that? And I think the answer is no. It's just a flavor thing. Like if I have a staff that gives me a +3 to my, my spell attack bonuses or something like that, or to my spell save DCs or something, that I don't think I'm casting it through it. I think I'm still holding it. We're getting into semantics and flavor here, but yeah, I don't know. So I just wanted to present that. It's interesting the amount of clarifying secondary videos I've needed to make on everything in Van Richten's guide. And I'll be honest, folks, I've never had to make... I haven't even finished all of the coverage of the main book, but so far I think I've made 3 videos clarifying different features of Van Richten's guide. I made a video all about the bite. I made this video. I can't remember if I made another video at this point, but I've never had to make so many clarifying videos to answer questions and address comments that people have brought up. So I don't know what that says. Does that say that the player base is more understanding of things or less understanding of things, that we need to dive into stuff specifically? Or does this mean that this particular book suffers from more issues or more fuzzy wording of things that require us to dive into it more and, provide clarifications on things? Yeah, it was a video on the Dampier Bite, clarifying the ancestral legacy features and the age limits surrounding that. And now this third video dealing with the how spiritual focus works. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And feel free to sound off how you're going to homebrew it in your game. I imagine most people are just going to ignore that aspect of it and just allow it to apply to all healing and damaging spells. I don't see any real power balance issues with just doing that, but let me know. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.